Hey, lovely to meet you.
Zach. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming down into the bowels of the convention centre here at the AI Expo. Good to see so many people love a bit of tech policy in the morning. And you're lucky. You've got what I think is definitely the best panel at this event, today at least. And I'm going to make some very quick introductions, and then we're going to start talking about what we came here to talk about, which is AI adoption, how it's happening here, how it's happening in Europe, how both sides might be able to work together a bit better, and what the future holds in that regard. So I'm delighted to be joined by the Deputy Chief of Mission for the Delegation of the European Union to the United States, Ruth Bajada. Did I get it okay? Good. Thank you very much. We're off to a flyer. Zach Whitman joins us, who is both Chief Data Scientist and Chief AI Officer at the General Services Administration here in Washington, D.C. Daniela Braga is the founder of Defined AI, CEO, based in this part of the world, but with offices on both sides of the Atlantic. That's something we'll hopefully delve into a little later. And Glenn Parham has joined us from Meta, who is the Public Policy Manager there and is a friend of CEPA, and we've had him at several of our events in the past, so thanks again, Glenn, for coming. I'm going to start with you, Ruth, if that's okay, and maybe talk about some of the very recent developments, actually. Last night there was a simplification announcement that impacts the EU AI Act, and I bring that up because Europe might be considered a little bit behind on aspects of AI. The big firms are generally American, some are Chinese, but adoption represents a real opportunity for the continent, for everybody. How does the recent developments impact that, and what are you doing to encourage AI adoption in general?
Thanks a lot, first of all. I always come here to the convention center and discover a new part every time I come here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming.
For inviting me this morning. I see some friendly faces in the crowd as well. I'm not the AI expert. The real AI experts are sitting in the crowd, so any detailed questions would go to Denise and Guillaume afterwards. But what the EU is doing, you mentioned AI adoption. That is, it's true. EU has been slow, and numbers have shown it, but we're catching up. I think we started off on AI adoption across the continent at 80% last year. We're at 91% this year. We are doing some good work also in terms of, as you mentioned, listening to companies and listening to experts. We do love to legislate, and we take pride in that, but we also take pride in knowing how to listen and adjust what needs to be adjusted. So last night, actually, together with the European Parliament, we agreed on a simplification procedure, which will allow more time in the adoption of the AI Act. And there are going to be a number of, you'll see a number of new dates coming up for adoption by 2027 and later. And of course, a piece that is close to our heart, that's when it comes to looking after minors and looking after children across our continent. And we also find there a lot of support also across the states in the United States when it comes to protection of minors online. So part of the simplification will be about that. We've also just announced most recently a way, we're a big market in Europe of 27 member states, but we also hear companies when they come to invest in Europe and they find 27 different legislations and 27 different labor laws. What we have done is now we have announced what we call the 28 regime, that's EU Inc., and that simplifies the way for a company. So even as a small and medium-sized enterprise or a company wants to invest in Europe, they don't have to deal, and they want to invest across different member states. They don't have to deal with 27 different legislations, but they can adopt one that's the EU framework, and that's one regulatory framework where labor laws will, they will have to adopt one form of set of rules rather than going through the 27. So we hope that with that, next time we meet, we will be at maybe 99%.
Okay, well, that's something to look forward to. We're going from what is comparatively high level, we're looking down, and there's regulation from top down in Europe, particularly when it comes to AI. There are plans for adoption. There's the EU AI factories and so on. But I'm going to maybe go to you next, Zach, and talk a bit more about the practicalities here. You're at the coalface. You've been rolling out the US AI. You might tell us a bit more about that, what it is. What are you finding in real terms, day-to-day terms, are the challenges in encouraging adoption and making it happen? Because it's easy to talk about, it's easy to put it in an old presentation.
Yep.
You know, you can throw it up there, but then there's the reality.
Nothing's better than putting AI in a presentation.
Yeah. Solves everything.
The room, you don't have to do any work. USAI is a cool project that we've kicked off in response to a broader initiative that we saw from the White House in leading AI adoption across the federal government. The main focus was to do it in a transparent and trustworthy way. The main concern that we had going into this was, when it comes to federally adopting AI practices, was how were the AI models being employed? In what use case were they being used? And what decisions could come from those things? And so we had to go through and enumerate all the different use cases that AI had in our general ecosystem. With the USAI type construct, what we ended up thinking about was, if we have all these AI use cases occurring across these large federal enterprises, how can we realistically and technically keep track of these specific uses of AI? It's really easy to say, like, yeah, sure, the policy is that you have to let everyone know exactly how AI is being used in this process, but as a policy control, it's lacking the technical effect that you would want from an audit perspective. I want to be able to see all the log data to say, these are the prompts and responses that are occurring in our current ecosystem. This is how it's being deployed, with what organization, with what office, and for what outcome. The big fear would be that you would use AI to make procurement decisions or rights or safety impacting decisions without proper oversight or transparency. So what we did at GSA was we built an infrastructure that allowed us to connect to all the leading foundation models in a central place. So a one-stop shop for your chatbot type solutions, which were a basic necessity, and we were seeing a lot of internal pressure from employees in terms of, I would like to have some sort of tooling that I can use for internal work, and I don't want to rely on public tools for non-sensitive use cases. So we were able to establish a general chatbot for that initial impulse of user demand that we saw. But then secondarily, we were able to consolidate all the APIs so that all these subsystems or sub-processes that were either machine to machine or incorporated into some other system that you already were using as your workflow could inherit those models. And effectively, we were able to hydrate all of these use cases through a single pipe. That gave us full transparency into what was happening in our organization, but also gave our users the ability to easily pick between approved models. Nothing is more encumbering than wanting to build some sort of process and having to go and open up 16 tickets to get access to the 3 different hyperscalers and all the different modes with which you would want to consume those models. So our focus was really on making life better for the user, our employee base, so that they can consume models, the leading models, as quickly and efficiently as possible, while also providing the telemetry and the control surfaces for our CIOs and CISOs to effectuate policy so that certain models could get in and certain models were restricted. And what we've seen is that we saw a tremendous amount of organic demand from the other agencies. So they saw what we did and they're like, could we in some way use that? Is there a way we could get in onto this platform? And so what we've done is we've turned the internal platform, which we built originally called GSAI, into this USAI pilot program. And the idea there is that we wanted to see if there was like a real system demand across the federal landscape for a platform like this. One in which we could offload or centralize a lot of the evals that we do for safety and performance of the different models, so we can contextualize the behaviors of these different systems and allow for the right model to be used for the right use case or sub-component of specific use cases. And then also provide a general platform for these other agencies to empower their workforce with the same baseline capability and centralize the access of approved AI models. It also provides the ability for you to host your own models. So the idea that you would develop your own internal model and then turn it back to your workforce is something that we're actively building as well. Functionally, we're thinking very much in the sense of, from an employee, how can we give them access to these latest and greatest tools without having vendor lock-in control the stack and interface directly with our data. This separation of concerns gives us a lot more flexibility as this space is too dynamic to really lock in on a single vendor. So we've seen a lot of success so far in terms of general adoption. And I think it's born out of the practicality of the on-the-ground truth and the use cases that we're seeing, but we really don't know how far this is going to go. We see USAI as a potential to continue and to continue to support and grow, but fundamentally we're in a moment of just dynamic experimentation, and we're really excited to see how it's been kind of like picking up in steam.
So dynamic experimentation, that's not something usually associated with government work.
No, yeah, I don't know if they love it, but the funny thing is we've seen just a tremendous amount of interest in taking a risk-based approach rather than a very policy-driven compliance approach. And so that risk-based approach has allowed us to build a risk portfolio of adoption rather than going through what would typically be a hyper-conservative environment. We don't have time to wait and see how this goes. Our employees demand it. The public demands that we are more effective, and we have efficiency drivers that we need to make sure that we're meeting. And so, functionally, it's just it's a scenario where the better approach of a risk-based approach it affords us to be a little bit more progressive in our deployment of these new technologies.
And are you seeing any results of actual results within government departments, within units?
Yeah, So the main issue that we're facing is how do we calculate ROI, right? Like, what is the value of a chatbot? Right now, the pricing right now is on the market is quite dynamic, and the question is, like, if we deploy a chatbot to your employee base, what is the true ROI there compared to the token consumption? What is that worth to the organization versus an API that you connect to your agentic coding or to an agent swarm or subsystem where you're seeing a lot more dynamic consumption? We are actively working in close collaboration with a lot of our tenant partners about how we can measure the effectiveness and the utility of these tools in their deployment of the use case to say, we're seeing time efficiency savings, we're seeing better service delivery, we're seeing, fewer contracts being written because we're able to write code. Those types of questions are very open, and we're working hard to understand, like, what is the true value of this product and service. We know that there is something there, but to quantify it in a reliable way, consistency is really the main goal for us right now.
Well, with a lot of what we're talking about, it's a bit early to tell. I think ROI is something, Daniela, you must hear about all the time from your customers, and internally you're looking for what's the point? Why would I go and buy Defined.ai's product? And the same, Glenn's nodding his head, he's wondering about the same thing. So maybe give a very quick introduction to what Defined.ai does. Zach's got two job titles. One of them is data science officer, and I think that sort of leads in, that data is a very, very important part of what you're doing. And maybe tell us a bit more about being a European who's doing business on both sides of the Atlantic in an AI company.
Defined.ai is an 11-year-old later stage scale-up. I am originally Portuguese, and I started in the AI world 26 years ago in Europe, which also shows the talent pool and the capability of the European universities to create AI-capable talent way before it was a hype as it is right now. There's a lot of debate around the US and Europe and the talent and things like that. I think I can tell I am the living example that I'm an European, graduated with a PhD in Europe in AI before it was called AI in 2008, and I lived corporate America with Microsoft, which found me there during my academic career. And with 7 years at Microsoft, moving around the world, I landed in Seattle eventually, where I built this company. And this company is the third, what I call the third pillar of AI. You have models, you have compute, and you have data. And you could argue that you also have the talent part, of course. We always need people to build innovation and technology. But the data pillar was what always captured my attention throughout my career. You cannot, especially when you moved from a paradigm of rules, when you were teaching computers how cognition and human-computer interaction worked through rules, to data-driven patterns, which now, with our compute power, we basically just dump terabytes and terabytes of data there, and we hope that our compute and the massive frontier models will make some sense of it. It became much more difficult to understand what's going on there because it's all about the quality of the data that you put in. So yeah, so explaining that I started my career in Europe. I started the company in Seattle, but I immediately set up an R&D center in Lisbon, Portugal, which is still our largest office. We have several. We still have headquarters in Seattle. We have Seattle. I'm here now for the last 3 years, and we have critical mass in the East Coast as well, but we mostly West Coast, now East Coast. And Lisbon and Portugal and Spain, it's been always the case. We've been always there, and now in Riyadh as well. So it kind of gives you and on the ROI question, of course, we work with the large AI world labs in the world, which originally when I started the company, they were the big tech, of course, the usual Microsofts and Googles and Metas, which was Facebook back then, and Amazon and Apple and IBM. And then suddenly, and of course, those guys have been always there. They have been leading the world innovation in AI. I come from one of them, of course, Microsoft. But what I've seen is the things changing from, telco companies were leading the way, even in Europe a lot, in terms of AI research and development back then, and suddenly you have what we call the AI digital natives, which is the open AIs and the Anthropics and the reflection AIs and Mistrals and all those guys who are not native in AI, who are born in AI and became as big as any of other clients of ours. Our clients, because they measure, AI is on this race, they measure results all the time. And the results are always, and these ROIs measured through data as well. So you have to have pre-training data at scale to train their models, but you also have to have the gold sets of the data test sets to benchmark every build you're doing. So this is absolutely critical, and this is what we help our clients do through closed source, copyright clear, ethical source data.
No, thank you very much, Daniela. And turning to you, Glenn, you're with one of the big players in this field, and you're trying to encourage adoption in different ways because it's your businesses, you have your users, you have your customers, your users, and what's the watchword? How do you go about promoting adoption of the products that you're now offering? And what are you finding that's challenging? And a global company as well, that's also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in national security, spent the past years in the Pentagon, being the technical lead for generative AI, hopped over to Meta about a year ago, where I now work on national security AI adoption. So taking our generative AI models, it's called the Llama family, the herd, they refer to it as, and bringing it to our national security community as well as some of our allies. So it's been incredible to be on this side of the equation now to see how people are really using our models all over the place. I would say really the reason why I jumped over to Meta, frankly, is because of the emphasis on open source and open weight models, especially in the national security context where you're dealing with air-gapped networks and really constrained cloud environments and so forth, classified networks. It can be difficult to bring online AI models from a lot of some of our incredible competitors. And so what I saw firsthand in the Pentagon across the DoD was the dominance, frankly, of Meta's models, our Llama models, since ChatGPT came online up until today. And what we've seen over the past year, I would say, is an emphasis and expansion to a lot of our European and NATO allies who are also in the defense context really extensively using our models, especially because other model providers aren't necessarily readily available there. And so I would say, by and large, our adoption strategy has been that emphasis on open source. We do a lot of work partnering, talking directly to the government, partnering with almost every defense company you can think of, because we know that's where the real innovation is. And because we're open source, they literally just go to our website, pull it into their own environments, and are able to get to work. And so we've just done a bunch of proof of concepts. We have, last year, we actually sent Llama to the International Space Station. We call it Space Llama, just to demonstrate how we could have our models running in crazy sorts of environments that are disconnected from the rest of the world. So, our adoption strategy is, I would say, the first marker and expansion was back in 2024. We amended our licensing for Llama to allow and essentially authorize the US government, as well as some of our allies, to use Llama for national security contexts. We spent a year after that partnering with a lot of the main defense companies, just to proliferate our models. And then it was awesome. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to sponsor our first national security AI hackathon right here in the DC area. And that was incredible. We got to see how our models across the board were applied in all sorts of different domains and contexts, and see how people were able to build around it, what they're able to deliver, and a lot of good things and projects are coming out of that specifically. So I think I really do like this job, just because it's frankly probably easier than a lot of my counterparts at other AI labs, just because it's open source and people can pull it into their own environments overnight and get to work.
So the fact that you come from a national security background and this is what you're working on, and the open source models are in use in defense and so on, kind of leads into a question that hovers over all this, which is the question of sovereignty, whether it comes to tech or it comes to AI specifically. And clearly you've taken a position at Meta. It's open source, open weight model. This is the way it's going to be, where anyone can use it. You can store it wherever you want. You can do whatever you want with it. Is that it? That's there is no water's edge. Like, there is no who can use it, who can't use it. You don't make that distinction.
So we only make our models available to the U.S. and our allies in our licensing and terms and so forth. Who knows? We'll just leave it at that. But back to your point on the idea of sovereignty, we've seen such an investment in Europe in our models and leveraging our models, because it's open source, because they can pull it into whatever cloud or on-prem system that they have configured, and get it spun up and use it. And not just run inference of the model, but do test and evaluation of the model, right? Fine-tune it on their own sensitive information, with the assurance that none of that data or information is going to egress back to other countries and be used to train on their data for other purposes. I think it's the assurances that open source brings that really makes it attractive to use open source.
Yeah. So I mean, you're right. It is two distinct questions. There's restricting those who gain access, and then there's building something sovereign that you can use yourself and no one else can access. But you made that decision as a user, as a company, or as a nation state, or as possibly as the EU, Ruth. I mean, sovereignty is a big topic. Independence, tech independence, there are different versions of it. At CEPA, the Centre for European Policy Analysis, for those who don't know in the room, we are very much in favour of transatlantic cooperation. We see it as a fundamental relationship for both sides. We actively encourage that cooperation, and we want to see more of it. Does sovereignty perhaps challenge the notion of using things brought in by other people, or is there enough scope in the way Europe is approaching sovereignty, you think, to always be able to use the latest and best from your trusted partners? What can you tell us?
We thank CEPA for always putting the transatlantic relationship to the fore, and I can assure everyone in the room that also the European Union wants to see this relationship grow further. I mean, apologies, I forgot your name, but
Glenn.
It's okay.
Glenn, you just mentioned that you have a lot of customers in Europe, let us start from yes, we want sovereignty, and yes, we want to ensure that the protection of the European citizens, but let us not forget that American companies are thriving in Europe. And yes, President Trump complains about that more American goods come to the EU vis-a-vis American goods being sold in Europe. It's the complete opposite in services. American companies today, if it's Microsoft makes 40% of its global profit in Europe. Google has more users in Europe than it has in the United States. So, and we want this, and we want this to thrive, but we do regulate how we would like companies to behave in Europe to protect the European customers. And again, there we have also heard companies that have been invested in Europe and European companies that want to grow in Europe, and that's why we have gone through the tech legislation, and we've come up with this package of looking at the legislation and seeing ways how to improve that. So that's what we will see. That's what you will see, and you will see also a lot more investment in AI across the continent, starting from the most advanced chips. In the trade deal that we signed in Turnberry with President Trump, there is also the amount of 40 billion chips that we will be buying from the United States, and that also will be used to make and to strengthen the European continent as an AI continent. We already have 19 factories, AI factories across the continent. We intend to build more. We have also some of the best supercomputers in the world. They were initially set up for scientific purposes. We are now strengthening those with further GPUs to use them for AI. So we have a plan, and that plan also includes a transatlantic plan, working also with many of the American companies that want to invest in Europe. And you mentioned also, incidentally, one area where we see huge growth is defense and tech. Mm-hmm. As the European continent now is really, and the EU is really investing in its defense, something that we should have done earlier, but now it's an opportunity. And there we see huge interest from American venture capitalists that not only want to bring European companies here, but also want to invest in Europe in defense and tech and defense. So there are huge possibilities on both sides. Yes, we speak of sovereignty, but we also know that it's by working together with the United States and also with other countries. We have a Trade and Technology Council with India, where we have a strong conversation on tech with them. We also work with Japan, South Korea, and a number of other countries that are like-minded, where we see a lot of potential to work together.
So sovereignty doesn't mean that it has to be European. So the Buy European plan for tech won't preclude using American
even
tech.
Buy European in many of so when we have money for European, when we are using European budget to scale up and to support the increase of European companies, and that's the part of the European budget. There will always be, of course, because it comes from European taxpayers' money, it's obvious that there will be a European preference within that. That said, all legislations that you will see coming out on that, we will always be living up to our international obligations. So even when it comes to procurement, if we had made deals with the United States that on certain areas in terms of procurement, we will be working together, we will honor all those areas that are listed in government procurement agreements, for instance. So we see the big people get stuck sometimes at the big word, but then do not read what comes after it and the potential to work together. But yes, it is our responsibility to make sure that European companies thrive and grow, and potentially come and grow also in the United States.
Can I ask you a direct question, Daniela? does sovereignty come up when you're selling? Do clients say, oh, I need it to be in a certain way or a certain place? Or is it, I just want the best system and I trust the company that's offering it?
In general.
In general.
Models. I guess there's two types of clients. There's the enterprise clients who care about their brand reputation.
Yeah.
And they definitely care about how the perception of and the interactions with the governments they're in. So even though, I mean, I have to say, even though some of the vision models, the best ones are coming from China, we should be all using the best models depending on the application, but we can't, right? And actually we can't because we have a different. This was not the case 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Right?
Okay.
So leaderboards from Hugging Face are there and show that Quen and other models are tough. So we cannot ignore that part, but then we have all the part of how were they built. We come in with how were these models built? Because we know. We know and we can tell, and we work with everyone. So we know how these models are built. We can reverse engineer how these models are built. And it comes down to how was the data sourced? I mean, and here there's no one that is currently, everybody in the East and the West is crawling the web. Everybody's crawling the web. So there's really no, which means copyright infringement, which means a whole impact on content creators' economy and livelihood. So then where is the difference? Where does the difference lie? And a lot of companies are doing a great job making it transparent, like IBM, like Meta, putting as open source models, because the closed source models are not going to make it open, obviously. That being said, they are enterprise clients, so they work with enterprises. They know that their clients care what's in there, and they don't want to have a copyright legal lawsuit around when they use it internally or when they integrate it. So we know that if these models are showing that we paid for this data, we use this data, this is, even though it's closed source data, I think that makes a huge difference. But then there's a lot of people, and the consumer, because they're obviously consumers cannot and should not be able, they cannot afford to pay for a model that is closed source or that they know that is, they cannot afford. So what are they going to do? They're going to use the lowest hanging fruit that is available, despite what's in there, and probably even being okay with this model taking their data away. So I guess that's the two differences. There's the consumers and there's the enterprises, and there's the brand reputation and where you want to play as a client.
Yeah, of course. So there's a level of understanding, and then there's also your appetite for risk, and there's your available budget, all factors that must come into play for you as well, Zach. Do you have, it's America first, is that I mean, it happens that that's where the tech firms, the big companies are, so maybe it just doesn't arise for you. Absolutely. But what if a German firm came with an offering? Are they ruled out or are they ruled in? Or just give them a good look?
So right now, a lot of the platforms or the OneGov deals that GSA are leading are primarily meant to spur or in furtherance of spurring AI innovation within America, right?
Yeah,
so
it's a procurement question. Yeah,
direct relationship that we are trying to execute on. But I think the point about where did this come from? How was it generated? Running evaluations and trying to understand fitness for purpose, fitness for use, and fundamentally, what is the sustainability pathway of these models is a core concern for all of us involved with this space. So, being able to understand the leaderboards and looking at certain models, maybe outperforming or beating certain evals, to us in our platform and on our approach generally is kind of fundamental to the offering. We don't want folks to go in blindly and pick a point in time assessment because at that point when they checked it, it was the top of the leaderboard. We believe much more in distributions, continual evals, building our own evals for specific use cases, and making sure that agencies are making the most informed decision possible, which will oftentimes break the heuristic of always going with the bigger, latest model. We're a big believer in the open source models for tailored applications, and in certain circumstances, you can improve the models to get to the outcome that you're looking for, as long as, or provided that you have established a core set of evals that you care about related to that use case. And so we've been really big on not only empowering like the main constructs and the main AI labs that we are required to, but on the other side, we really want to make sure that the decision point as to why you would choose specific models, regardless of what Garden Europe potentially provided, is the most informed and most data-driven based on your own internal subject matter expertise. And so we've been really focused on not only providing like the leading AI models, but also providing the open source model alternatives, smaller models, specific models for very specific use cases, and then empowering and allowing for agencies to take their subject matter expertise, bring that to bear to develop their own custom evals, and then ultimately provide a more accurate or precise solution. And also giving them the platform to regularly re-evaluate over time to assess for things like model drift. And so our main focus, yes, is in prioritizing the AI American companies, American AI companies, but also making sure that we're building practices that would be broadly applicable once we can open up that aperture to more models and more model providers ultimately.
Yeah. I don't know how well I trust the surveys about AI adoption at a personal level, at a business level, because number one, I don't spend time reading the questions. So the question could be, have you ever used AI? Yeah, put something in ChatGPT or whatever Claude wants, therefore AI user. That doesn't really follow through. But for serious adoption, it's going to start corporate. And let's face it, it's going to start at a business level. That's what you'd expect, and it can start at a government level, as you've outlined, Zach. So maybe putting you a little bit on the spot, but given that you've been at it a few years already, and the AI office is only really getting up and running in Brussels, what advice would you impart? What maybe do you think you wish you'd done a little earlier or done a little differently to encourage the adoption, that speed of adoption within Europe itself?
Oh, I mean, I think the conversations that we've already been saying about like getting your data in place, making sure that everything is as flexible as possible, not jumping to solutions and being really skeptical of the potential ROI where you could potentially see maybe alternatives or like cultural growth before you go in and fully invest. The things that we've been wanting to do, and this exists across the kind of 4 efforts we've been running in parallel. The first one being these procurement deals where we tried to consolidate the T's and C's, to simplify it, to minimize the amount of work required for the agencies as well as the companies in making these procurements. Yeah. It takes a lot of time to run procurements and to negotiate one-off. It's much better if you can consolidate those T's and C's where you have data protections in place, and we're currently on the process right now trying to establish some semblance across the federal complex, and that has been hugely beneficial because it just means less work for everybody. Secondarily, trying to expedite our security posture. So we have a 20x FedRAMP program, which is meant to allow for faster and more, and frankly, more safer approaches to securing or providing security posture and security controls to these new or nascent, at least to government technologies. And a lot of tech companies will come to the government and be like, it's just too onerous to get through the process. There's too much involved. I can't, freeze my code base over here just for you to look at it. So working on a consolidated security platform that can move at the pace that the technology is moving was a critical step for us, and I wish we had started that earlier as well. In terms of providing a general platform for adoption, it's all about the telemetry. If you can maintain data controls where you can see the transactions occurring within your enterprise, that becomes a holy grail data set for your operations. Instead of offloading all that telemetry to a third party, being able to in-house that so you can understand all the different network effects that are occurring with the different integrations with AI, that has proved to be...
Could you give us an example of that? So what you...
Yeah, so like if we established this general point where we can integrate with third parties. So like you have a data interface like Databricks, for example. It can plug into our API, and now all of our LLM work is using this one consolidated resource of which we can capture the telemetry. Or I can plug it into our RPA team, which is working over here with CFO, or I can plug it into our CRM and Salesforce. Having that direct integration now has built this network effect or a functional way for us to have an X-ray through the behaviors of the whole organization from this single point. You have a nervous system that's organically growing as more and more direct integrations occur from this singular point, or you can now start to see everything. And then you can do broad analytics and forecasting, which helps your predictability, which is the big fear here. Like you can see ramp-ups, especially in agentic coding, where there's just too much consumption that you didn't forecast for, and now you have to scramble to find the money to keep the work going. So this has given us a far better chance to get ahead of those types of spikes, and ultimately it gives us a broader control set on the whole organizational effort. And then lastly, training has been a big part of it. So we've built a community of practice where all federal employees and state and locals join, and we do like regular meetings and seminars, and the team has seen a huge growth in the amount of membership for that, just on general interest, and we're able to bring our corporate partners in to help explain how they use their products and best practices on topical things like building out agents and things like that.
Yeah.
So having those 4 pillars of being able to buy it easily, being able to secure it quickly, being able to integrate it into systems really consistently, and then also being able to train your workforce all at the same time has been really beneficial for us, and I wish we had started earlier.
Well, I mean, you're busy. It sounds like you're busy. Glenn, I've heard from you before about the challenge in getting the talent who can actually build what is needed. Particularly, I think we were talking about it was in the national security arena, but it is a challenge across the board. And this is a chance for Europe. And I know, Daniela, you can speak to this as well, that you found the talent you wanted via various means from various parts of the world in Portugal, and we might talk about that in a minute. But Glenn, can you put a number on it? I mean, how many people out there are capable of building these models before the model gets good enough to build itself again? Where does it stand today? Dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions?
I mean, definitely not millions. I kind of look at it twofold in terms of the ability to actually train these like frontier models that are coming out from all of our competitors, and as well as Meta. I mean, it is from my perspective, a quite small universe.
Yeah.
It requires some of the brightest minds in the world, like my colleague here who is at Microsoft. And so I think there definitely is a war for talent, and like where these people are going to concert their efforts from a national security perspective, super important. We want to make sure we are retaining them, that they're incentivized to stay here, to build. That's like really, really critical. But on the flip side of that, when it comes to AI talent, I think of it at like the application layer and the integration side. That's kind of the work that I did in the government and the Department of Defense. And there's also a lack of talent there, right? It's always been hard to get tech talent into the government. We've seen over the last year, there's been a lot of great efforts across the US government to do exactly that. Meta's been a sponsor in various initiatives there, which has been incredible. But you really need AI talent that is going to be able to, these people are able to understand the capability of these models, but also like domain-specific applications, right? Very niche things within, the military or wherever else in the U.S. government or other governments as well. They're able to understand like how to actually integrate these models that makes sense, and I think that is a rare subset of people. I think we're definitely making progress in that front, but we can definitely do more. But it's been it's been incredible to see over the past year just how both the demand and supply of that talent has like increased. So I think we're on a good path. So.
Well, that's reassuring. It's also reassuring that there are other jobs that might be available we can all hope to get in the future.
Yeah.
But Daniela, you've the experience in Lisbon. There are some specific functional reasons that you can get the talent, because they're not all Portuguese.
No, exactly. So a couple of things. First, Lisbon and Portugal has been building a decade of policies to enable qualified talent to come into Lisbon in a very fast visa process and very exciting tax breaks. It's 20% income tax breaks, which nobody gets, even here.
Nice.
Right? So, not to mention that the cost of living is definitely much lower, and the connectivity, both the 5G and fiber, which has been one of the first, even before I had fiber in my homes in Bellevue, Washington, Portugal already had it all over.
Wow.
So that's an interesting thing to note. Now, and also the air flights, the airline situation right now. I mean, we have a ton of direct flights to the US and to North America daily, connecting to Lisbon. So we were able to attract faster to Lisbon. When we are hiring people worldwide, it is easier to get them in Lisbon than in the United States.
Wow.
Of course, for the process of visas and all of that, right? So this has been why still today I have probably 70%, 65% of my workforce there. So that explains that. But the talent part, I have to say that AI has been always a multidisciplinary area.
Okay.
It's not just AI. I mean, AI is also a recent field. It's impossible to have yet the throughput from universities worldwide to get people in AI. You're bringing together for 20 years people from all over, from all sorts of disciplines and subject matter experts, including myself. My background originally is linguistics. So explains why, and I did a path from linguistics to computer science, but so it is a multidisciplinary field, more so today where you need lawyers, our team we have a legal department, of course, because we are all about the ethical and legal data sourcing. But
glad to hear you're all about legal.
Course,
that's good.
But we have a whole network of subject matter people, doctors, chemists, physics, all STEM fields, international politics, all 500 languages, people speaking 500 languages. This is not on payroll everyone necessarily. It's a lot of our freelancing group through our platform, our expert connecting platform called Nivo. But you need a multitude of people, and unfortunately, less and less engineers now, thanks to the rise of AI. I mean, we're able now to deploy. We have a team of 20 AI engineers just running workflow projects. Workflow is the data collection pieces that we do. We have a marketplace off-the-shelf offering, and then we have the data collection part of data. That the question I always ask my organization, because our clients ask the same questions, is how can I double revenue with the same headcount? Yeah. And this is what AI is doing, exactly. And we have an engineering group of 20 AI engineers just launching work. So this is the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I think, Ruth, what we just heard from Daniela, from Glenn, it highlights that the race is not run here. I mean, I know there are some gaps, and there are certainly no European giants, a handful of European giants. Some of them were in with the Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, in the last few days, talking about how Europe can compete, how Europe can become more competitive internally. The simplification process has started. What does the near-term future hold? Because there are challenges around some of the legislation, the other rules, in terms of, we hear it from the firms, we hear it from some user groups that are possible barriers to adoption. What's coming down the pipe, simplification-wise? Is it a lot to be determined, I'm sure?
Look, I wanted to say a few words also on
go ahead.
on the workforce, and maybe related to that is that Europe today has become also a place where a lot of people want to come, we have also seen some people that have also opted to leave the United States and come to Europe. I think one of our member states that is highly benefiting from that is the Netherlands, but we have Estonia in the room. I think the Baltic states today in Europe are very much at the forefront of, again, when it comes to countries like Finland, you see, and all the other areas, whether it's biotech, you see.
Your own home in Malta attracts talent too.
I mean, the numbers there will not shift the European numbers because of the size of the country, but still, we're also proud of that. So I think there, we see quite big shifts. I would say that from what everybody has this idea of, the European economy is not doing well. I would say, we have some areas where we can really be proud of. That said, I think you also, we're all worried. We all worry also on the, we've mentioned earlier China. We are all worried, and all governments in Europe are worried about how do you protect your systems. We have a war in the continent. Incidentally, also working very closely with Ukraine is also putting us, pushing also our learning capabilities also in tech and defense. But again, when at every single moment, I forgot the actual numbers, but the number of attacks, cyber attacks and hybrid attacks that are taking place on the European continent today are frightening. And that's, I think that's also the next step. Whilst you have all, whilst you try and grow and whilst you try to get companies to scale up, how do you on the other side, and what's the role for the European Union is to ensure that you're protecting against cyber attacks and having all that side, plus also making sure that your system is built with trusted partners. And again, when we look at the AI stack and upcoming conversations on that, in Europe, we're also looking at how to work with the United States to have a safe and Western stack that we can go with. So I think there's plenty to catch up on, but also plenty where we need to work together, because otherwise others are not going to wait. And they will be offering their stack, and they will be offering their stack to countries where we will need to work with for business, whether it's Africa, whether it's in the Pacific. So we have no option but to try and make sure that we offer a stack that others are ready to buy.
Thank you very much, Ruth. A few minutes left. I'm going to open up for questions. If anyone has any, they'd like to put any of our panel. You just mentioned there, Ruth, the cyber attacks. CIPA published a report recently on shadow war being run and instigated by Russia, particularly against Europe, and a lot of it is happening in the digital sphere. And it's something we'll be talking about. We've got a panel again here tomorrow where we'll be talking about adoption of defence tech and how you can build a future force and how that makes sense. And Ukraine is definitely a huge part of that conversation, which, although not an EU member yet, is the biggest country in Europe. Often overlooked, it is European. So it has a lot to offer in the future. Anyone, just before I step out? Yeah. Please just state your name and your affiliation and speak up.
That's right. Hello, good morning. Thank you for the panel. My name is Marita from the Embassy of Estonia. A question for Zach. You mentioned one of the four things you're doing. One of them is training.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, and maybe I'd like to know a little bit more about it, because that's one of the key things. How are you doing, and what it takes a lot of time. I think it's a change of culture, and
100%.
How has it been?
It's hard and it's shifty. What we've found is that there is no single answer, no silver bullet. We have been working with a multifaceted approach where not only are we doing this kind of community of practice across all the federal employee base as well as state and local, but also within each agency working on a number of different steps. There are education pieces on governance, how the thing needs to be approached. If you want to have a use case, you have to go through a series of steps. How to use the thing directly. So for like a chatbot, that was like our initial issue that we had was people wanted to use it. They had their own version of it, and how do we bring it in, and how do we have them use it safely? What are the data controls on those things are a big question that we're seeing. So we're seeing a variety of like, how do I use this thing? How do I use this thing within my work context? What are the new things that I don't understand or maybe are new to me? The ways in which the landscape is shifting from a lot of our employees are inundated with like MCP or agent or skills, and they're always feeling like they're on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, and there's a big fear there. And so overcoming a culture of fear was a big problem. And I'd say one thing I would say is having a broad application of the tooling across the entire workforce was a key win for us. Instead of selecting like a few pockets where adoption could take place, the literature also supports this, where if you give everyone access to the same tooling, there is a higher likelihood that organic learning will occur between desks. You can lean over to your friend, but how did you do this? They're more likely to admit that they used AI in the process and not hide behind this or feel like they have an unfair advantage. Those were a lot of the cultural impasses that we were trying to overcome by quickly blanketing the tooling across the entire organization. Then it comes down to keeping up with the Joneses, and as new tools come in, trying to incorporate them into a secure city as quickly as possible.
Yeah, human nature still plays a role in adoption, that's for sure.
Oh.
Yeah, Michael.
Michael Nelson at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I've been doing digital policy for almost 40 years, but I started life as a geophysicist. So I'm really into data. So I'm very glad that you spend a lot of time talking about data. Normally it's AI means hardware and chips, software, and we have to worry about the people. The data should be getting at least 25, 30% of the attention. So here's the question for any of you who want to take it on. What could governments do to make government-generated data more available and also more reliable? I mean, here, the politics are terrible. First off, politicians can't see data. They can go and touch a supercomputer, but data is the crown jewel. We must keep our data. The idea of sharing it with the world, that doesn't make sense to them. So how do we get more data out of governments? How do we share it? And also, how do we validate it?
Who wants to go first?
3 easy questions.
Yeah. And go quick.
Yeah, very quickly. In my time in the Pentagon, that was one of the things that we worked a lot on. It actually, from what we saw, came down to acquisition reform, which is maybe the most boring thing ever. But ensuring that across the board, you have baked into your contracts like a mandate for the different vendors that are playing in whatever space to open up an API, right, and require that API can connect to whatever other external systems. That was, we found, to be the best path forward to actually like making data more available and not as siloed. So
I have to say that I don't have an answer. I was in the task force for AI in the previous administration for President Biden. We were a group of 12 trying to make the data more available for R&D in the United States, starting with the agencies, the federal agencies, which have a trove of them, of data, and there are some websites there that are making it available, but there is not, but nobody wants to give it away. So it's and so just that, and then we even thought about getting an access system where we could basically qualify access to certain people, not others, which for obviously internal American institutions and maybe some private companies and we had all it all, but the reality is just setting up that the logging and who can access, keeping that up to date, the cyber component and risk. I gotta say we didn't get anywhere with that part of the situation. I have to say that but again, on the private sector, I mean, obviously, I mean, we're doing that in a closed source world. Of course, in a smaller scale than all the data in the government. It is not impossible. It's a federated marketplace, pretty much. Our partners have rev shares, and of course, there's a monetization component, which is not what probably the government would do, but it is not impossible. The model, we have a model. We just would have to get more sources and the government to actually play along.
Can I jump in on this?
We're out of time, but keep going. We can give it a few seconds.
I used to be the CDO at the Census Bureau, so this is like so near and dear to my heart. Hydrating the internet with reliable data and making sure that that's interpretable to these modern interfaces, of which people are decreasingly going to websites to get information. They're going to go through an intermediary with an LLM. We have an obligation to make our data consumable by these systems so that they can reach the end user. And ultimately, the model providers do need good data. They need new, novel, original data. This Ouroboros of consumption of additional AI-generated content is going to poison these models if we're not careful. So using good data from public money to create a public good that benefits not just the individual citizens, but also the companies is so critical to not only the health of the nation, but also the economy. And I think we need to do a better job and invest more in it.
Very quickly. With no questions at all. You're coming in, the time is up here, people. Very quickly, go ahead.
So real quick, I'm Dana Lennon from the Summit Group DC. I'm very AI positive, so take that into consideration for this question. In government, there's a lot of work being done to keep the models from drifting because they know that that's important, especially in defense. My concern is in the private sector, the model drift is extreme. And even OpenAI and these other models will say it hallucinates 78% of the time. People take it as gospel. The state of Tennessee built AI and denied 98% of the Medicare folks. J&J just did surgical AI that like pierced people's spinal cords and they're being sued $1 billion. The question is, so across US and Europe, what can we do to mandate like controls and guardrails on these models to prevent drift, because real harm is being done to people on the private sector. And that is a serious concern. Nobody's talking about it. It's all Mag 7, yay, data centers. Nobody's talking about the vast harm that can and is being perpetrated as we are having all this great experience with AI. So over to you.
Well, there is the EU AI Act, Ruth. That is, guardrails are very much part of that. But I don't know if anyone wants to take it.
Who's those? And where's the sensible middle in all of this? Sorry.
I don't know if anyone wants to take on what's a massive challenge.
I can say that, like, at least in the governmental context, because we have executive orders that mandate the transparent and equitable use of AI, that we have the evaluation, the continual evaluation, and the investment to do those evaluations and develop guardrails. But in the private sector, and that's the problem. So the best we can offer right now is that we're collaborating with NIST, so the Center for AI Safety Center out of NIST, to publish as much as we can and to encourage the private sector to do that. But I think fundamentally this is going to come back to legislation. They need to legislate this.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you very much, Dana, for the question. I know we have a couple more questions. You might put them to our panelists as they're coming off, because I don't want to keep them up here, and we've hit the time, if that's okay. Thank you very much to our panel, Glenn, Daniela, Zach, and Ruth. Let's give them a round of applause.